Okay, good morning. So we're up to Siman Ayin Vov. We're halfway through this Siman. So far the story is we're discussing whether or not you can say Krias Shema in a situation where there's some sort of tsoya, there's excrement, for example, a dirty nappy, a diaper, or things like that. That's what we discussed yesterday. Now we're up to Sif Dalad. And we're talking about a case where there's tsoya, there's some sort of dirt on your actual body. Hoisa soya, says the Mechaber, Hoisa tsoya al basara, if there's some tsoya, some excrement al basara on your body, but it's covered over with clothes, or you put your hand into a bathroom, through a wall, but there's no bad smell. In those situations, either where there is tsoya on your body, but it's covered with clothes, or you put your hand through a Beis HaKisei of old. Nowadays, our Beis HaKisei, Baruch Hashem, are much improved, more hygienic than the Beis HaKisei of old. And there's a debate about what the status exactly is of today's Beis HaKisei. But either way, we're talking about where you're machnis your yad into a Beis HaKisei of old. Yesh matirin v'yesh oisrim. There are those who permit you to say Krias Shema and those who forbid you to say Krias Shema. V'yesh oimrim, and there are those who say that opinion which says that you are allowed to only allowed you but where they only allowed you to say it if the tsoya is on a part of your body which is inevitably covered even if there was no malbush there. For example, an armpit. So if there's tsoya under the armpit which is going to be covered anyway even if there was no malbush there, that's when they allow you to say it. And therefore one should try and be strict. And therefore, if there's tsoya on a part of the body which is not which is more exposed, but which is not normally covered, then one should avoid saying it. And you should clean yourself before saying it. And then just concludes this sif. The Ramah says, "V'shichvas zera al basara." If there's shichvas zera, there's siman al basara dinik b'tzoya, then it's got the same status as tsoya. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah. Bivgodov, Sif Kotan Yud. Umi sheyodov metunofes mikunuach beis hakisei. If a person has been to the bathroom and his hands are soiled because he's wiped himself after going to the bathroom, im ein bohem mamosha soya. If there is no physical substance of tsoya, el lichluch ba'alma, is just his hands are dirty, ba'alma v'holach reich, and the smell has gone. V'hi al yodai dumid milmulei. Zaya, and his hands are considered full of zaya of dirt. Shari likris konegda afilu b'lo kisu. Then you're allowed to say Krias Shema opposite that person, even if his hands are not covered. For dafka acher, dafka another person. If another person, another person saying Krias Shema, and opposite him there's someone who has just come out of the bathroom and he hasn't yet washed his hands, you're allowed to say Krias Shema against that person. But dafka acher mishum delavka tzedom, because there's no physical substance of tzoy on his hands, and therefore I can say Krias Shema opposite that person. Aval hu gufa, but that person himself, that person himself is if his hands are dirty, they haven't yet been cleaned, or chichuch harosh means he's scratched his head. Also likris Krias Shema tefillah achiyit yodov. That person himself for sure can't say Krias Shema or daven until he's washed his hands. So or even if there's no water, he should at least clean his hands. So if you take a look at in my one, I don't know what is in your one, in footnote 14, he says, what is it, how do you clean your hands if there's no water? Halachically, what do you do? You rub it in the dirt or in dust in the ground, or some sort of straw, grass or something, or on some sort of material. You sort of wipe your hands on that. The whole hand, the back and the front, until the wrist, or at least until the knuckles. Right, so you're in a field or something and you've just been to the bathroom, you're on a hike or something, so rubbing it against the grass or something like that would allow you to then say Ashayotza or to say Krias Shema, whatever it is. Okay, Sif Kotan Yud Aleph. So we said not only if there is tsoya on your guf and it's covered over with begodim, or you put your hand into a Beis HaKisei of old, into a chur, Rotzaloma, Mechitza yesh beino lebein Beis HaKisei. For example, there is a mechitza, there is a barrier between himself and the Beis HaKisei. Or poshet yadu lefnim min ha-mechitza, and he puts his hand through the mechitza. Di'iloi teimah hachi, but if you don't explain it like that, halo yeshem b'simen pegim, or the oslikros kneged mechitzas Beis HaKisei, you can't say it even opposite a mechitza of Beis HaKisei, because the Beis HaKisei of old has got a status of where there's physical tzaya there, and therefore you've got a problem. So we said yesh matirin. Now what is the svara to say yesh matirin? Why do some people say that it's okay to say Kriya Shema opposite a person, or if you yourself have got tzaya in a part of your body which is normally covered, let's say in an armpit, or which is not fully exposed and there's underneath clothes as well? What's the svara for the yesh matirin? It says in the pasuk, all of your breath should praise Hashem. Your mouth and your nostrils, bichlal hachilul, they're included. Bichlal hachilul, that's in the praises. Avelo shar evarim, but not other limbs, and therefore I'm okay. So if there's soa in a part of the body which is sort of covered, it's not exposed, and there's a clothing over it, then I'm allowed to do it. Because even if they're not naki, it's shari. What's the svara of those who forbid it? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Taimam dichsiv kol atzmosei tamarna Hashem, Hashem micha moicha. All my limbs, all my limbs have to be clean for me to say Kriya Shema. If one of your limbs is within daled amas, 4 amas of tzaya, then you've got the same reason you should forbid it. If the tzah is not on your flesh, but is on your clothes, and it's like on a shirt and there's a jacket over it, and it's covered in that way, that everyone would agree would be okay. A person's got to be very careful that his clothes are always clean, especially when it comes to davening. Okay, so we said, for example, there's soa in a part of the body which is normally covered, aside from the clothes which are on top of it. And so he gives the example of an armpit. Says the Mishnah Berurah, that is when kisu beged is going to help. But if it's on, a part of the body which is normally just exposed, then it will not help. Kedivrei hamachmir, and the remark concludes, the Mechaber concludes, v'nochen lasos kedivrei hamachmir, Ubeis hatchak, says the Mishnah Berurah in Sivkot Yudaled, yesh lismeich adivrei hamatir, you can be somech on those who are lenient. Shedavka hapeva hachotim ubechlal hahilul, that just the mouth and the nostrils have got the limbs which you've got to be careful about when you're praising Hashem. Avelo shahivarim, but not other limbs. Okay, and then we said at the end, the Ramah says shichva zera has the same status as soya. Says the Ramah in Sivkot, says the Mishnah Berurah in Sivkot Tezvav, rotzolem al kein yesh lahachmir bo. Therefore, one has to be very careful if there is shichva zera on your flesh, even if it is covered. It's got the same status of tzoya. But if it's on your clothes and those clothes and it's covered, then shari lekula alma, then it will be permitted to say Kriya Shema or to learn Torah if shichva zera is on clothing which is covered. V'chanal b'tzoya, in the same way as tzoya, as we said previously. There are those who say that it has not got the shichva zera has not got the same status as tzoya. Miu b'sefer Chasidim siman tov kuftes muchach tafil al begodov v'mechusa yesh lerochza lepashtei, that even one has got shichva zera on their clothes, one should wash them and get rid of it. Shelo yehei dovuk b'hatuma, that no tumah should be attached to him. Mikolshkein kashenichshal chas v'shalom al yedei keri, and certain who is nichshal through some sort of carry through this seminal mission, so there should be no reminder or memorial or stain of that issa, and therefore it's important to try and remove it before davening. Okay, sif hey, tsoya b'fi tabas. So if there is tsoya, there is excrement on the pi tabas, on the actual mokum of where it comes out. Afilu hi mechusa, even if it is covered over. Also likris l'divrei hakol. Then, if it's not clean, then you're not allowed to say Kriya Shema according to everyone. Even if it's not actually visible. For example, when a person is standing, it's not visible, but it's only visible if a person were to sit down, to squat, and therefore it would be visible then. Everyone would agree that it's also likris Kriya Shema. Okay, let's just do the Mishnah Berurah on Sif Hey. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Cotton Tezayin. B'fiat tabas, right? So that means the place where it comes out, the rectum. Then that would be also to say Krias Shema. Mishi yesh lecholi hatchirim. Now, if a person Rachmanas son has got some sort of illness, v'zov imenu dam tomid, and he's bleeding from that place. V'agav hadam yetz imenu leiches serucha, and because he's got this illness, and not only blood comes out, but some sort of liquid comes out, mufeshes, which is sort of soiled liquid. V'yesh lereach ran, it's got a bad smell. Also b'chol davar shebekdusha. Then in that situation, it's also to say a dover shebekdusha, kolzman shelecha serucha sheises menu, so long as there is some sorts of liquid emerging from him. V'im ein shom reach ra, but if it does not have a bad smell, im adam oy halecha yetze derech techia b'seirugin harmin ame'ayim, then if the liquid that's coming out then is coming b'serugin min hame'ayim from the intestines, v'yesh le'takona b'rechitzas mokum hazuhoma, and he can clean it. Im sheises v'yered toder me'atzma, if it's constantly flowing or regularly flowing, oz havim epi hatabaz ve'ein sorech takona, and you don't need any takona. Okay, Yud Zayin also likros. In that situation, if there is any dirt at the pi hatabaz, then it's also likros. But the evidence Kara Krias Shema, and if a person did go ahead and read Krias Shema, he's got to read it again. Regarding tefillah, we've always had this distinction. When it comes to Krias Shema, which is a deraisa, so then he's got to read it again. But when it comes to tefillah, which is drabanan, then there's a discussion. If you've got to read it again. If there is any staining at the piyat tabas, then you need to repeat even tefillah. And then we said ledivrei hakol, also likros ledivrei hakol. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Cotton Yuches, Rotzolei mafilu divrei hamatir b'sif dalad b'tsoya. Even if those who are matir, we said previously al basora muchusa on the previous sif, if it's on your clothes and it's covered over, here is worse. Shani hachat v'mkayim nofish zuamatfei, because we're talking about some tsoya at the place where it comes out, and therefore it's considered more dirty, and therefore it's more of a concern, and one cannot say Krias Shema or K'dova Shebekdusha then. Al kein yesh le'odom, this is really the take home from today's limud. Al kein yesh le'odom lis'oira liros tomid shinoki piyat habas sheloi, that a person makes sure after he goes to the bathroom he's always got to wipe himself and clean himself properly. Or l'rochse b'mayim al roik. There should be no remnant of any tzah there, and he should make sure he cleans himself properly. But if it's not visible at all, even when he's sitting, then it's muta. So they're already the take home from today. That again, Baruch Hashem, we're living in a world where our hygiene and bathroom usage is much easier than days of old, with straws and pebbles to clean yourself and things like that. But nowadays, Baruch Hashem, we're living in a world with toilet paper and things like that. So just to make sure the person is clean properly before you say Krias Shema, and you do as best as you can. Okay, say the word with that.